Okay, today we're going to make spaghetti on the Traeger, and this is just all of the ingredients that I'll be using. There might be a few extras in there that I already have that are not on display here. This is just all the stuff that I bought today. I typically use all organic sauces, so my tomato sauce and my diced tomatoes and tomato paste will be organic blend. I use whole wheat, 100% whole wheat pasta, whole grain pasta, and so I try to use more healthier versions of some of this stuff. Obviously, Italian sausage is not real healthy, but we're going to cook that up. And I'll show you the process. All right, we start off early and get the grill going. Gets turned to smoke. Takes about 5-10 minutes for it to get going. Once it gets going, we'll close it up. Let it warm up a little bit because we're going to cook the sausage first. And of course, it's about 30 degrees out here today, so we're going to have to cover the Traeger up with some blankets just to keep it warm, so we got to keep a good internal temperature while we're cooking. So we'll give that about 10 minutes and we'll come back up. Alright, we're going to start off by cooking the sausage. I usually get Zesita sausage. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, from our local Schnucks, but I shopped at Walmart of all places this time and got this type of bird farm Italian sausage. So hopefully this will be as good, but I can't claim full credit for this recipe because I use a recipe from food.com. Some of you may have used it before, cooking regular spaghetti. It's called Joe Mama's spaghetti, famous spaghetti. So it's a alteration of that recipe. So, but it calls for 4 quarts, which was what we're going to make of sauce. It calls for 2 pounds of sausage, but I like an extra meaty sausage, so or extra meaty sauce. So I use 3 pounds. Sometimes I use 4. So this is where, you know, I kind of ad-lib things because I cook the sausage on the Traeger. I use an insulated cookie sheet so that when you put it in the grill it doesn't warp so bad. Regular cookie sheet will work, but you'll find it'll flex. It makes it difficult to chop up the sausage once it starts browning. I also use olive oil, and I also use beer to cook the sausage in a little bit too. I prefer Yingling beer, but in the Midwest you can't get it around here, so I bring home a case or 2 from Florida when I go to Florida. So we'll be marinating this a little bit while it cooks in a little bit of beer. You don't want to use too much of this because if you use too much, obviously your sausage will taste more like beer than it does sausage. So we'll start the process. We'll just get everything started, get everything cut up and put on the tray, and we'll put it on the grill. But I put a little bit of olive oil in here, just a little bit of that. I also use butt rub, which the guys over at guys and gals over at Duggar Pool will appreciate this. But I put a little of that in there, just to give it a little extra kick. And of course we're going to cut the sausage up and place it on the grill as well, or on the tray as well. Already smells good. And I've already started warming the grill up. Put it in smoke setting. Usually takes about 10 minutes for it to start start up, and then once it's started up, we'll turn it up to about 350 degrees and cook the sausage up real good. And of course, you know, it's kind of hard to brown it. I mean, you could cook this on stove if you'd like to, but obviously cooking it on the Traeger, you get a lot better flavor, in my opinion. So this looks like a lot of meat, and it is, but like I said, I like a meaty sauce, so this will definitely be meaty. And once we get this spread out here, and once we start cooking it, we'll add a little bit more olive oil here in a second. And of course, this will reduce down a little bit, so it won't take as much space on this tray as it looks like it is now. So mashing it out here like that will help it cook a little quicker. This will take about 30-40 minutes to cook, probably. Maybe a little less time. You don't want to burn it. So now I'll go ahead and put a little bit more olive oil on it. Now, olive oil is not a requirement. I'll also put a little bit more butt rub on it. And if you're interested in any of the ingredients or any questions you have, you can ask me on Facebook. Alright, we're going to throw this on the grill and get it started. The Traeger started. We cranked up the temperature to 350 to cook the sausage. And it's cold enough out here that I want to keep the temperature up, so I've got some old rugs that I don't care what happens to. And got them over at the top. They make a blanket for this, but I'm too cheap to buy one. But you could use a welding blanket as well. We're also using hickory pellets for this. I like hickory pellets. I use it for just about everything, so that's my standby. So we got this fired up, so when we get this thing up to temperature, we'll bring out the sausage and get it started. Okay, like I said, this is a variation on a recipe from food.com called Joe Mama's World Famous Spaghetti. And while we're letting the grill warm up, we'll go ahead, and I always like to get my spices ready. I've also got to chop up my veggies, so that, again, this is my variation on it. So the original recipe calls for, if you're making 4 quarts, calls for 3 teaspoons of basil. So we're going to take, you can use your own favorite version. I'd like to use fresh, but I don't have any, didn't have any access to it. So we're going to take 3 teaspoons of basil. And it's okay if you're a little more, a little less. So there's your 3 teaspoons. And then we have 2 teaspoons of dried parsley flakes. So here's our parsley. And we have 2 teaspoons of parsley. So there's 1, 2. And then we also have 1 teaspoon of salt. I use sea salt. So we're 1 teaspoon of salt. You can salt taste, obviously, at that point in time. There's 1 teaspoon. And then also they call for red pepper flakes, crushed red pepper. It says 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. I would really suggest that you do the 1/4 teaspoon. Otherwise, it's pretty warm. So I'm going to use 1/4 teaspoon. If it needs to be spiced up a little bit more, we'll do that with the jalapeno. Then we also need about 1/2 teaspoon of fresh, coarse ground black pepper. I have a pepper mill here, so we're going to grind about 1/4 teaspoon. I like pepper, so I'm going to probably put about 1/2 teaspoon to 3/4 teaspoon. And of course, you know, you can put whatever you like in there, but I find that this combination comes out best. So that's about that's about 1/2 teaspoon. All right, and then the other part is brown sugar. They want you to use 1.5 teaspoons of brown sugar. I tend to put quite a bit. I usually put a tablespoon in. Again, this is my variation. You can adjust it accordingly. I will also be putting a little bit of honey in this too, but I don't do that now because honey tends to burn or taste burnt. I will put it in after the sauce is in the pot. So there's my my spice combination. We'll probably might as well add a little bit of butt rub to that as well. I usually do that too. That's about a it has salt in it, so you don't want to use a lot of that because you've already put salt in there. But I'm using sea salt, so it won't be nearly as spicy or salty, I should say. Okay. The recipe also calls for some minced garlic. The minced garlic that I use is Spice World minced garlic. It's in olive oil. I believe it is. This is in olive oil. Ready to use? I don't know. It doesn't say. Usually it is. It's either that or water. So we'll mix that in there too. I also will put some of this in the sausage when I'm cooking it too because I like extra garlic. So we'll go on and start cooking our sausage. It should be ready to go. We have our sausage on the grill. We're going to let that cook at 350 degrees. We're just going to keep an eye on it until it's brown. I'm guessing it's going to take about a half an hour or so to brown up. But then we'll come back and check on it. Okay, again, like I said, this is a variation on this recipe, so I can claim it, I guess, as my own. Some of the things that are different about it is the original recipe calls for a small onion. Well, as you can tell, I'm not using a small onion. This is a pretty good sized onion. I love onion. I like a chunky sauce. So this will be diced really coarse. It does not call for any other type of vegetables, but I like using bell peppers and mushrooms. So we're going to chop up, for 4 quarts, I do not use all of these. I use about a half of each of these. So I'll cut these in half and slice them all up, and then that way I'll have them for next time. So I'll put them in a Ziploc bag and suck all the air out of it and put it in the freezer. So I'll have it for next time. The jalapeno pepper also is optional. I'm not going to use the entire jalapeno pepper. So what I'll do is I'll cut this up probably into quarters and use a quarter of it today and put a quarter in the rest of the cut up peppers for the next one and then discard the rest. Mushrooms also, if you don't like mushrooms, then obviously it's optional, so you can remove it if you want. But be careful when using mushrooms. I made this recipe a couple times and used too many mushrooms, so all you taste is mushrooms. So this is a very small package of mushrooms. It's about 8 ounces, so that will be fine for 4 quarts, but I wouldn't want to use any more than that. I've tried to use portobellos before. Portobellos seem to have a very strong wild flavor that overpowers it, but if you like that sort of thing, you might want to try that as well. So, but we're using, I could have sliced up the mushrooms as well, but those are the only vegetables that are not organic, so organically grown. So we're going to chop all these up and get them all ready to go, and we'll have a look at that when I get done. Okay, I'm sure it'll come up as far as wanting to know how I cut this stuff up, as far as the style. Like I said, I'm using half of each of the bell peppers, and I'm putting the other half in a Ziploc bag and then putting that in the freezer so I have a fresh set of vegetables for next time I cook. So basically I half it, clean out the guts, and then we slice it into small sections. So, nothing fancy, obviously. I'm not a very good cutter. Get the job done though, I guess. And then we cut it this way. Yes. And that's it. It goes in there just like that. So I'll do that with all of the green and the yellow and the orange and the red peppers. I've already cut up, like I said, I use half of a jalapeno pepper. That's a pretty good size jalapeno pepper. That's about how much of it ends up being put in the sauce. But that I'll just discard or eat it or something. So, but that's what we'll do with the peppers. busy on the sauce. Get it ready to go, because what we'll do is we'll put this saucepan on the grill while we're cooking the veggies. So let it start warming up so that when the veggies are done, we can go ahead and put the meat and the veggies in the sauce, and the sauce is already starting to smoke. So we start off with two 14.5 ounce cans of diced tomatoes, or 28 ounce can. Gives it a little bit extra texture. And then two 15 ounce cans of tomato sauce. And like I said, I like to use the organic sauce. It tends to, I think, have a little bit better flavor to it. Whether it is actually any better for you remains to be seen. So we'll add the 2 cans, and then we have 2 6-ounce cans of tomato paste. This stuff's not always the easiest to get out of the can. And this will simmer on the grill when we get ready to put it on the grill. I take the sausage off. The sausage is just about done. This will be a good time to talk about that. I don't have any video of that, but I chopped that all up so that it's more like crumbled, like you were making sloppy joes. You can make it as fine or as coarse as you like. If you want it a little bit chunkier, don't chop it up as fine, but I kind of like to make sure it's nice and chopped up so that it's finely ground. And if you don't have one of these, have you ever done that before? This is from Pampered Chef. This is probably the best thing I ever used. I used to use just a spoon and chop it up, but this thing works wonderful. It makes chopping up that sausage seems to be a little harder to chop up than, say, hamburger is. Alright, so we've got our sauce in here, and then we'll add our spices that we prepared earlier. We'll add that to the mix, and then we'll also add 3 to 4 cloves of minced garlic. I'm going to use already minced garlic, so I don't have to chop it up myself, and I'm just guessing that's a clove, that's a clove, a clove, and a clove. I like lots of garlic, so it might be more than what a clove is, but that's how I measure it. Alright, and then the last thing that we're going to add is that a can of Rotel diced tomatoes. You can use the mild, the original, or the hot if you'd like. This just gives it a little extra kick, and I know the jalapeno and the crushed red pepper is going to give it a little bit of extra kick, but this is actually going to kind of smoothen out that extra bite, but this will give it a little bit extra flavor. Now on the flip side, if it doesn't turn out exactly right, then we won't use that again. This is the first time we're trying that. And then of course a little wine. I'm using a Cabernet here. This happens to be something Central Coast Cupcake Vineyards Cabernet. So we'll just put a little bit of wine in there. And we might choose to put a little extra more in there after a while. After it cooks a while, because a lot of that will cook off. So, alright, so we'll stir this up. We've got all of our spices in there. Now, the Rotel tomatoes, or the Rotel tomatoes is an option. This is the first time I've tried it, so hopefully it won't ruin the flavor. Alright, we'll mix that up. And then this will go on the grill to smoke. Now this will, being as though this is 4 quarts, by the time we put the meat in there and the veggies, this will fill this whole pot up. Okay. Now their sausage is browned, and sauce. And we're going to let that cook, and then we're going to cook up our veggies. Now we'll want to keep an eye on the temperature so that since we're cooking at 350, we don't want to burn our sauce. So we're going to get this transferred over here, and then we'll throw our veggies on to cook. Our veggies on here now, and we're just going to stir up our sauce a little bit. We're probably going to need to add a little bit of liquid to this. We're going to simmer this for a very long period of time. It's going to be way too thick. We'll add a little bit of beer to that as well. Your choice. Like I said, we'll want to keep an eye on the temperature on that. Since we were cooking this at 350, we might want to turn the temp down just a little bit once this starts to bring that to a boil. So we're going to then probably going to bring a little bit more beer out, a little bit of olive oil, and some butter up to put on our veggies. A little bit of olive oil on our veggies. We'll let that cook in. And we'll also put a little beer. Not a lot. And of course, a little bit of butter up. And then we'll let that cook, and as soon as the onions start to get clear, we'll bring the mushrooms out and cook them. You don't want to cook them quite as long because they're going to saute in the sauce, so that'll help that help them soften up. But you don't want to cook them too long. Our veggies are done. We've already put the mushrooms on. We don't want to cook them quite as long, so we're going to add them to the sauce, and we've turned down our temperature to about 180 because we don't want to burn our sauce. We'll check the consistency here in a minute, and we'll see if we need to add some water to our sauce. But this is essentially it. And we're going to let it simmer for a while, and we'll get our pasta ready. And we'll be ready. Earlier, I was going to add a little bit of liquid, add a little bit of water, sort of put it up, and then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add some honey. Don't put a whole lot in, just a little bit. That's quite enough. And you don't want to put this into too high of a temperature because for some reason when honey's cooked at a high temperature it doesn't do well. So a little bit of honey just adds a little bit of sweetness. The brown sugar that we put in there earlier will add some sweetness as well. But I felt that we needed to add a little liquid to it because we cooked a lot of that off earlier. We don't want it too thick. I mean, as you can see, it's nice and thick. That's going to produce a real nice sauce. We're going to let this simmer for at least a half an hour. You can let it simmer longer if you like. But as it sits now, you could eat it if you like. But we want to soften up them veggies a little bit more and allow some of that sauce and spices to permeate the meat, the veggies, so it all has a nice smooth flavor to it. We'll be getting ready to cook the pasta here soon. Be ready to eat.